Ujasanev, and welcome to the Maā Sa podcast. I am your host, Rama Hetep. And in this podcast, we'll go over the Maā Sa philosophy, the age of Aquarius consciousness, culture, and the restoration of spiritual authority in your everyday life. You know, the title of our conversation today is What is Abundance? And I'm really going to have to make that title work for what I actually want to talk today about. You know, we definitely want to get into what is abundance and redefining what is abundance so that we don't, create so much misery and suffering in the world. But I also want to use this time to kind of just discuss the Young Miami thing that's going on with her song, Spin That. And so I want to get into multiple conversations there. So hopefully I'll be able to tap into what is abundance as we go down this path, so to speak. Before I get into that, one of our major problems right now is that we, especially as young people, we are completely driven by material things. So as a matter of fact, material things are a sign of happiness now. So we have tethered our happiness. We have tethered our life success to having certain physical things, which is the whole concept of the song Spin That. And through that drive to have those material things, whether it be nice cars, nice jewelry. And when I say nice, I'm not just talking about jewelry that can cost $5,000, $1,000 or whatever. We're talking about jewelry that, one piece may cost $200,000. Well, you may have a purse that costs $300,000. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's kind of where we are right now. We want cars that right? We want to drive around in cars that cost $1 million. This is kind of where we have gone. And so we exist within a society that is promoting these ideas through the music. And I'm not going to get into details about this, but in my Sunday service that we just did, a Sunday understanding that we did last Sunday, I got into details about why we exist in a society that needs a lot of crime. Okay? We need crime because crime keeps certain parts of the population employed. And the nature of this particular population is necessary for society to divert its interest and make sure that interest is pointed in a certain direction. Unfortunately, that is the Black community. So we live in a society that needs a lot of crime, needs a high amount of crime. And in order for you to have a high amount of crime, you got to get people, you got to convince them to function beyond their moral sense. You got to have them function against their own sense of well-being and so on and so on. He has to motivate that. And so unfortunately, that's what our music, especially in the rap genre, that's what our music has become, is a mean to replicate immoral behavior that will maintain or increase crime. Now, what I want to talk about is how we got here, because the way you create a sense of immorality within people, get them to drive and do things that's actually counterproductive to their long-term success, their long-term viability. The way you get that is that you got to create a concept of poverty and lacking. As a matter of fact, the quickest way to get people to act out of the concept that produces harmony and abundance is you got to create the situations for poverty and a sense of lacking, a sense of deficiency. Once a person falls victim to those concepts, they will have no problem violating the fundamental laws of society to get what they perceive they need based on them overcoming whatever sense of lacking they may have. So if you can create the conditions of poverty within any community, you're going to drive up criminal behavior. That is a basic psychological ideology. Now, unfortunately for white people actually think, because they've been impregnated with white supremacy, that their communities will never turn into the quote unquote communities of black people, so to speak, some communities of black people. But that is actually not the truth, because if they are introduced to systems that create poverty, and as a matter of fact, areas where white people live in, neighborhoods of poverty, they have a high crime rate as well. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of white people that don't like the police either, but that's a whole nother conversation. But when you create poverty and you create an identification with poverty, and you create a society by which people think that they cannot get ahead naturally because the system is wired against them, when you condition people to think that way, they are willing to do crime, criminal behavior that goes beyond the moral codes, the behavior that goes beyond the penal codes. They're willing to do that because in their mind, they're not whole unless they have these things. So within our community right now, that's what we're suffering from. So the music is simply just an avenue to communicate immoral behavior, to communicate criminal behavior, and to motivate high rates of crime. That's all it's doing right now, all right, especially in the rap genre. And again, we live in a society where crime is necessary. So any politician that gets up in front of you and says his goal is to end crime, lower crime, or whatever, he's telling you a flat out lie, because there's a need for crime to keep certain groups, certain people within our population working and employed. And I'm not going to get into that right now. I got into that for our Sunday understanding. Okay, so now here's my thing on Young Miami, and I'm going to get into some things right here. You got people criticizing her because she is putting this song out and they feel as though this song is going to program young people to think a certain way, act a certain way. As a matter of fact, I just saw a video on social media where, the song is being played in a school gym with a whole bunch of kids, and they're doing the song, doing little dances to the songs and things of that nature. Yes, it is programming kids. There's no question about it. Anybody that says it's not impacting kids, they either lack understanding, lying, or they're what they call a psyop. They're purposely denying something that they know is the truth to get people to continue to do it. So yes, this is going to program kids. As a matter of fact, we just came out of the prom season, and so I don't know if you're like me, but I saw all these extravagant prom send-offs. And, it's amazing that, people are spending now $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 on prom. But I'm not going to necessarily judge you because you want to spend that type of money. Obviously, that money, in my opinion, that money could be used for other things. But I was more so looking at the type of character, the common theme, if you will, that was expressed through this thing. So people were renting. I saw cars, Lamborghinis. People were renting Bugattis. And they were coming out, flashing the money, throwing the money up in the air, and having, people were renting even jewelry put on. So just we divulged, I guess, into this whole concept of coveting material things. And it's being projected now to our kids. So now our kids are coming through saying, I want my prom send off to look like a rap video. Now, my question and my only concern is, okay, if you have that mindset, I'm hoping that you're also going to go to college. I'm hoping you're going to also go to, get a job and, work and make the money. But the type of money that the lifestyle that they're looking at it's almost impossible to make that money through corporations, and right. So they say, okay, well, maybe they'll run a business. Okay, fine. No question about it. Again, I'm not trying to judge. But the lifestyle that you want is going to also be hard to get through running a business. If you're talking about driving Lamborghinis, if you're talking about driving Bugattis, if you're talking about, wearing, $50,000 worth of jewelry, $100,000 worth of jewelry, if you're talking about flying in private jets, if you're talking about having a multi-level mansion, if you're talking about these things, then it's going to be very hard for you to do those, working a job and running a business, unless you create a corporation. So therefore, if these people who have been conditioned to think this way, if they live in a society, a neighborhood, if you will, crime-ridden neighborhood, where their friends, cousins, family members are driving these cars through doing illicit activity, then yes, it's only common sense that you're going to think that they're going to also replicate this behavior. So now getting back on Young Miami, yes, the criticism is somewhat valid to say that, hey, yeah, they're going to be young kids out here. They're going to emulate this. As a matter of fact, once her song came out, there was a young lady on social media who was, had stolen about $20,000 worth of Louis Vuitton bags. And she went onto social media, and utilized the song Spin That as a background music while she was flashing her $20,000 worth of Louis Vuitton bags that she had stolen or whatever. And so, but she ended up getting arrested. So we can't sit here and say, I'm not going to sit here and say that, yes, Young Miami's song is not going to influence young people. Because it is going to influence young people. When you're playing it in gymnasiums, when you playing it in elementary schools and people are dancing to it, and then you got the lifestyle that is being promoted within the homes. Prom send-off is now about Lamborghinis and throwing money up in there and flashing money. Yes, it's creating an idea within the minds of the kids. So no question about it. But we have to give people like Young Miami a break, and here's why. Because while the song is toxic, there's no question about it. It's a toxic song. It's going to influence people. It's not just about, we can just listen to the song and not be influenced. Yeah, you can, but what about other people? So the criticism is valid in my regard. But here's where the criticism is invalid. Because sometimes as Black people, as we look at each other doing things, we don't take into consideration where these people are coming from. See, you may have grown up with a father, you may have grown up with a mother, you may have gone to college, you may have these things, and therefore you're going to have the frame of mind to reason, to understand impact, and put yourself in a position to do certain things. But when you're looking at certain kids, most of these kids that are coming through the rap, right? Some of these people that are rapping, especially from the female standpoint, these people grew up as teenagers and young adults stripping to make money. Can you imagine a person, an 18-year-old stripping to make money? Don't have a father in their lives. Mom is not as mature as she needs to be. You can't say to that person, hey, take the moral high ground. That's wrong. And I think that is wrong. So we're talking about equally two things. Yes, the song is toxic, but the criticism that she's getting is completely uncalled for, not because it's not on point, but because I can't ask these people to make moral decisions if they don't have a foundation to do so. Now, I'm a parent, as you're a parent, we can have conversations with our children and say, hey, I know you're going to hear this song. This is what it's saying. Let me communicate to you why you can dance to it, but not listen to it. I mean, as parents, we got to put in a lot of work. But at the same time, we can't criticize her. That's all I'm saying, because I can't ask her to take the same moral code in life that I'm taking when, not necessarily talking about young Miami, but if you were stripping at the age of 18 to pay your bills, how are we going to talk to this person? How are we going to expect this person to do anything other than what they're doing? And if you have a music industry that's willing to take advantage of these people, to use their poverty against them, you're not going to win that battle. Now, here's where there's 3 levels of poverty that we have to give into conversation, that we have to have a conversation about today. And I may just end after this, but there are 3 levels of poverty that we have to consider when you're judging people. You got to think about this. All right? Because we're all functioning within this system. We're all an expression of the singular manifestation, right? We're all the source manifesting through the limitations of the mind. All right? And so we are the source manifesting through the limitations of the mind in the experience of either ignorance or experience. People are manifesting as the source through ignorance. They're going to do ignorant things because we haven't created the foundation, the system that allows them to rise above the ignorance. So if you got people that are wallowing in ignorance and then you're saying, hey, don't do a song, that's not only is it incorrect, it's inappropriate for you to tell that person that they have an avenue to become rich and for them to take the moral ground that you're taking. It's incorrect. All right. So the first thing is poverty of parents. All right. And so, we know now that, as a matter of fact, there's a study that just came out that says 70% of kids in juvenile facilities, 70% of kids in juvenile facilities don't have fathers. So if a person is starting from a standpoint of having a poor relationship with their parents, or their parents were poor examples, then how are we going to hold this person accountable to having a moral code? See, we are going into a place where we haven't put ourselves in a position to truly challenge what's wrong with the society right now. What do we need to do to fix things? We can't talk about male-female relationships. Why? Because your politicians are telling you that there's no such thing as a male, there's no such thing as a female. That it's okay for transgenders to date and it's okay for women to date with each other, and they're promoting that. So here you are criticizing young Miami, but you're not criticizing your politicians. We're not falling back on the reasoning to make things right, to repair the relationship that's going to create the moral code within people. So if you're not going to stand on business and talk about repairing the male-female relationship, repairing the father-mother relationship, repairing the importance of the father-mother relationship, then we can't criticize young Miami. Okay, let's go to poverty number 2, poverty of circumstances. You grow up in an area where food is scarce. You struggle to get food. You struggle to get basic needs taken care of. You struggle to, all right, you go to school and everybody else is doing well and you kind of are, looked upon as being poor or whatever. Those are what I call poverty of circumstances. You grow up in areas where poverty is something that is obstructing you from getting your personal needs. I grew up in the projects and, there's a poverty to that. Now, we grew up in the projects, but my father worked at a middle class level almost. Okay. So we always had money to buy food and stuff, but I spent many days in my neighborhood feeding my friends, sneaking food out the door to my friends. And the self-esteem that comes along, the damage to the self-esteem that comes along with that is going to create immorality, immoral behavior. It's going to force people to develop a mindset of lacking. It's going to force people to develop a mindset of poverty, and that's going to motivate crime and immorality and not thinking about other people, taking, all these different things. The third thing is what we call poverty of understanding. We all suffer from this. Poverty of understanding. We all have been trained to think a certain way through our religion, through our philosophy. We've been trained to think that there's only one life. We've been trained to think that, you can die and get away from the pain and suffering of earth and go to heaven somewhere. We've been trained to think this way. We've been trained to be slaves. So with that mindset, you only live once, you're motivated to reach and do things that take you out of the concept of peace and harmony. So yeah, you don't have a problem selling yourself incorrectly. You don't have a problem harming each other. You don't have a problem with any of these things because you know that you got to live life to the fullest. A basic concept. I'm going to talk about this one concept that if everybody knew it, immoral behavior would end tomorrow. But there's a basic concept, a fundamental traditional African culture, and it's founded upon reincarnation, and the Hindus call it karma. In ancient Egypt, we call it aridu. The concept that your decisions create your future life experience, both in this particular life path and in your next life path. So there are two fundamental things that put us in a position to act like this, to bring into manifestation a group of people manifesting according to the song Spin That. One is reincarnation. The other one is the concept of arit or karma. If you knew that the relationship that you made with people is going to be your benevolence or malevolence in the next lifetime, you'll get good at benevolence. You would think about what you're about to say. You'll think about what you're about to put out into the world. If you understood that concept, if you understood that you're going to come back to earth to experience those things. If I rob you, if I kill you, if I maim you, I just created a relationship of malevolence that has to be brought back up on me in my next lifetime. That's why sometimes when you're born into the world and you meet people, quote unquote, for the first time, you go, I don't know what it is. I just don't like this person. Yeah, because more than likely y'all have another experience in a past life. And this relationship right here is just allowing that experience to reciprocate and grow. So you reciprocate your abundance through the benevolent relationships you create. But see, you have been trained and people have been trained that abundance comes through material things without the relationship. So while you may be able to get the material things that you need right now, the $1 million car, the fancy houses, whatever, by destroying the lives of other people, by negatively influencing other people, in your next life, you're going to live a life of misery and suffering and malevolence as people are going to attack you in different ways so that you can experience the notion of what you did to others in the past. And that's the third level of poverty. I call the poverty of understanding. Basic fundamental African principles have been taken away from you. And the people that have taken these away from you, they know these relationships. They do these relationships. They do these rituals. They do all these things. But they keep you in a reciprocal ignorance so that their children can be rich when they come into the world 800 years from now. So poverty is the number one way you create immoral behavior. That's the number one way. If you can create a sense of lacking, and the way I overcome this lacking is by having that material thing. If you create a sense of poverty, that I suck, I'm not good, I don't fit in because I don't have. And if you create that within a person, you're going to motivate them to do immoral crime and things of this nature. And that's what we have to fix way more than criticizing Young Miami and the record labels that are promoting this music. So I'm going to end real quick on what is abundance. In Maā Sa, it teaches us according to the supreme intelligence, right? Ma'at is the supreme intelligence. It says that Ma'at manifested for our benefit. If we are the source manifesting through the limitations of the mind itself, Ma'at manifested for our benefit. See, I am the source. The source is at the core of any and all material things. Therefore, I am the source. Me as the source, I'm already in possession of everything that I need. Now, the only reason why I experience poverty, misery, and suffering is because I fall victim to the things of earth. We call Wabu the things of earth. My love becomes for the things of earth. And therefore, I take myself off the path of my benevolence. And to us, that's how we experience poverty, misery, and suffering. And if a group of people, if an ethnicity can keep you in that perpetual place, then it knows that it's going to create institutions around your ignorance, around your craving for those physical things. It's going to say, yeah, you can get a Bugatti. It's going to put movies out there to inadvertently teach you. It's going to put music out there to tell you, hey, just to let you know, you can get that Bugatti, but here's what you got to do. And then it creates a genre of music and influences people to not only accept it as a reality, but accept it as a cultural expression. So now it's cool to go to prison. It's cool to kill somebody. It's cool to steal from somebody. And that's essentially what that song is doing. But according to the Supreme Intelligence Maā Sa, all right, abundance is having what you need when you need it. You are not existing on this earth just simply one time. You got to come back to the earth and you got to live according to the suffering of benevolence you created through your relationships. So it's having what you need when you need it. We call that abundance. And remember, your decisions create your future life experience. You are the source manifesting through the limitations of the mind, and therefore your decisions create your future life or the next life experience. Because your decisions are an expression of your ignorance or they are an expression of your knowledge and understanding. So again, I just want to close on this. I'm not trying to criticize Young Miami because that criticism would be, she's not going to listen to you anyway. She's trying to get money. All right. India Irie, the videos that I watched, she didn't really criticize Young Miami. I think she's just getting fed up with the music industry and where it's going. But guess what? If our generations of kids, our generations of families, since I grew up with the high school in the 80s, everything past that has kind of always been a constant kind of going down. But if we're going to keep children, our kids grow up in the deficient state, if we're going to create ignorance within our kids, and they're just going to continue to try to find their space within this ignorance, we're not going to try to repair the family. We're not going to try to repair the needs, right? The parents within those families. We're not going to get man and woman to function with each other. We're going to continue to accept these silly ideas of a man who's biologically a man can be a woman, and allow our politicians to tell us these things, right? And say that they're helping us, and not attack the fact that, hey, we need man and woman to stay together. We need man and woman to be comfortable dealing with each other. If we're not going to focus on fixing the true root of the problem, so that we can truly now criticize Young Miami, because she is standing up on the same platform that we're standing up on. She's had both of our parents. She didn't grow up in poverty. Now we can have a conversation with her about moral codes, moral understanding, and hold her accountable. But until we fix the paradigm from which our people are raised in, growing up in, functioning through, then there's no criticism that needs to be exerted towards Young Miami. Take care of your kids, have communication with your kids, talk to them about the song. They're going to be dancing to it this summer. Hopefully your child understands what the song means and understands your family dynamic and will hold themselves accountable to the moral code that you have taught them while they're out here in this world and going through this psychological attack. Ucha Saneb Sa Maā.